And welcome everybody to another Nothing Like a Good Book. Proudly brought to us by the Arizona Book Publishing. Arizona Book Publishing, where they'll take you right through from the very beginning with just your ideas through to a film if you want it. And, of course, our good friend Stuart Title and Trust when you want it done right. Now, my very special guest is Amy Joy Hess. We're going to talk to her in just a moment. Her book is titled GunShot Witness. It's very unique. You know what? It's real, for starters. Absolute truth. On March 6th, you may remember, maybe not, back in 2016, Pastor Tim Remington was shot 6 times by a man who thought he was stopping an alien from Mars. Author Amy J. Hess, she recounts his miraculous survival story, his ultimate return to his church, and the people whose lives he impacted in her new book, GunShot Witness, the Tim Remington Story. Very important about the church aspect. Now, after being shot, Tim survived blood loss, multiple surgeries, a saddle clot, an infection, and a stroke to boot. He made an incredible recovery. And it only spurred on his belief that God still works miracles. Tim Remington and his wife, Cindy, they ended up, they founded Cataldo Lighthouse Ministries, a church that welcomed, and still does, drug addicts and victims of abuse and offered them a second chance at life. That's lovely. Now, in addition to Tim's story, GunShot Witness highlights a few of the people who overcame their hardships with the help of the church. And it also dives into the psychology behind Tim's attacker, Mr. Kyle Odom, who was struggling mentally and spiritually. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my very special guest and author, Amy Joyce Hess. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you're most welcome. Gee, Grady Harp, who we use a lot of the times on the show, he's a wonderful critic, Amazon Top 100 Hall of Fame reviewer. He says this, that the impact of Tim's and Cindy's lives and ministry is a testimony to the power that God's ongoing miracles continue to create. It's a luminous book, and it provides much-needed optimism, a ray of hope that despite the trials of our times, spiritual support is present and accessible. Okay, so there's a good wrap to start with for you, Amy.
Thank you to Grady for that.
You've been a research writer for many years. You're a chemist also from Wallace in Idaho. You've written nearly 1,000 articles related to the Bible, science, technology, international politics, and current events. And here's the irony. You've ghostwritten more than 30 books. Of course, ghostwriting meaning you've been the writer for other people's books.
Right, and it's a good way to get good at writing. It's a way to be able to do research, which I love to do, and get paid for it. But my name is not famous. People don't know my name because my name wasn't attached to most of it. And so, but I was allowed to write basically on anything I wanted to, as long as it fell into certain categories. And so I was able to write about, the situation in China with Taiwan or Egypt and the Muslim Spring. I could talk about
technology
research of cancer. Technology research of cancer, whatever I wanted to write about.
Wow,
so I
very
had a lot
diverse
of fun.
topics. Unbelievable.
Right,
and you had
about everything.
I think you had a series, what was it called now? Science and Wonders, wasn't it? Science and Wonders?
Science, right, because there's a saying, signs and wonders. Well, this is Science and Wonders.
Mm-hmm.
That's about my time as a science student at a public university. And I went there, Mark, to learn about geology and biology and chemistry. I actually have a degree in chemistry, but I also have a master's in biology. And I had a lot of fun with my professors. I love learning things. That's what I do best. And
you sound like a bright spark. I'll give you that. You're passionate about your faith. I know that, and how God has made an impact on your life, right?
Right. Well, God has done a ton of miracles in my life. And so I went to college, though, just to learn. I wanted to learn. I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I didn't want to start a fight. That's not what I went for. But what I discovered was that God cared about my atheist science professors in a way that I really didn't expect. And God moved me more carefully with my geology professor and my cell biology professor than with anybody else in my entire life. And it was such a surprise that I decided, and such a good story, that I decided I had to write it down. And so I've got 3 volumes out in that series, and I'm waiting for the end because God promised me certain things, and I'm waiting for those things to take place. And if they never do, then they get to stone me, Mark. But there's actually a lot of hope, and I've been watching God do things. So it's a good series.
There's a lot of stuff going on around the world right now. Now, you say, Amy Joy, that people are desperate for God to do real things in their lives, right?
Yes.
They're desperate to hear from Him. So this book gives them hope that He really does care about them and He can do anything. What say you?
Don't you think that's true, Mark? I mean, I think people really want to know that God is real, that He's not just a nice idea, He's not just a story in a book, that God is actually there, and that He really does care about us and is willing to do things in our lives and rescue us. I think people need to know that because there's so much unrest in our world right now. There's so many things that people are afraid of, and they need to know that God has their back, that He does care about them, that they matter to Him. And that's what this story really does. That's what the story about Tim really brings to light.
Very much so. I mean, that God saved him from 6 large, brutal bullets. He could protect any of us, and He can save us and turn our lives into beautiful things. And that's what this book is really about. How would you define? Well, it's a miracle. The guy was shot 6 times, and the 7th missed him or something. But you'll explain that. But I mean, would you define this as a miracle? And how would you define a miracle?
Okay. Well, we use the term miracle fairly loosely. Let's say I'm at the grocery store and my child falls head first out of a grocery cart, and I reach out and I grab the kid right by his ankle before his head hits the ground.
Yeah.
I can say, oh, it was a miracle. I caught him in time, but maybe I played baseball and I got really good at grabbing baseballs out of the air too, so we throw out miracle. I think that a miracle for the purposes here is just something that really defies natural explanation, where the natural explanation just isn't good enough. That supernatural intervention really is the best explanation. When I was a little kid, I was born with a herniated belly button. And this is the first miracle in my life personally. And so your hernia is where the contents of your stomach are trying to escape. Your muscles are not strong enough there. And my intestines are trying to escape through my navel. They weren't going to be able to do surgery on me for 5 years. And so my mom, which I guess is common, that's a common thing, but my mom would wrap my stomach up with cotton to protect that area because she didn't want it harmed. Well, when I was about a month old, my grandmother called my mom up and said, go look at the baby. I think God just healed her belly button. So my mom went to where she had just laid me down, and I had a brand new, healed, perfectly fine belly button. And so there's 2 sides to that. Biologically, your body, first of all, everybody who's had a hernia knows that they just get worse and worse and worse. But let's say my body wanted to heal itself, it would take time. Well, it wouldn't take 5 minutes. So I was healed in 5 minutes, but also my grandmother called from 2 counties away to say, hey, go look at the baby. I think God just healed her belly button. So that's a sort of thing that just defies natural explanation, that a supernatural divine intervention is actually the best explanation. And so when we look at Tim, there's a lot of things about Tim's life.
I have a very important question for you, and that is,
Yes,
what has your belly button got to do with why Tim Remington's story is important to share?
I'm segueing back to that. But yeah, that's an example of a miracle, something that defies supernatural explanation. And so you look at Tim's life, and Tim has a lot of things that took place that just defy physical, normal, biological explanations. He bled out on the pavement, Mark. He they infused him with liquids there, but when they got him to the hospital, they still had to give him 9 pints of blood.
Okay, now let me understand. He was outside. Was he outside his church or in town or where? On the footpath? Where?
They had just finished, he had finished counseling some people. There was a few people left over who were cleaning up from a pie fest. And he walked out the door and went to his car, and Kyle Odom had been waiting for him outside. And he unloaded a magazine of 45 caliber hollow point bullets on
handgun,
him.
Right? A handgun. Mm-hmm.
It's a handgun, but I don't know. 45 caliber bullets are huge.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful guns. So shot him 6 times, right? Now, what was the process like interviewing Tim Remington and the members of his church then putting this book together?
Well, it was a lot of fun, actually, because Tim's a good storyteller, and he just tells a story, just very matter of fact, very straightforward. And I was able to ask him a lot of questions while he, drank his milkshake and I ate my salad. And it was a lot of fun to find out all about it, because the whole story is not one of tragedy. I mean, he went through a lot of pain, and there were a lot of other things that happened after the initial shooting where he came close to death several times. And the newspapers didn't always catch all of that. But
how did they catch this animal?
The story is a victory
him?
story.
Well, did they catch him immediately, or did it take time? Or
they actually were able to get his license plate. Some of the church members who were still there caught his license plate, but he still managed to get on an airplane and fly to Washington, D.C. because Kyle Odom wanted to get a message to President Obama. So he threw materials over the fence at the White House, and the Secret Service didn't like that very much.
I wouldn't imagine so.
No, so yeah, he was caught 2 days later.
Wow. I mean, is this book supposed to appeal? Well, I guess it would, because of the principle of the book. I mean, appeal to both Christians and non-Christians?
Well, of course. I mean, it's a thoroughly unapologetically Christian book. It's a Christian pastor, so it's all about him and his faith and the work that he's done. But first of all, I think the majority of people believe in God. They don't necessarily know who God is, and they want to know who he is. Mm-hmm. But even more than that, we're living in times there's a lot of upheaval. And people are looking for answers, right? We've got the situation in Iran. They might want to get a nuclear bomb. They're fighting in the Middle East, like always, but it's getting scarier and scarier. We've got high gas prices and high food prices and COVID and war in Ukraine. And people are not feeling safe and secure.
No, we've got a lot more coming too, and
right. So
then you've got the government doing crypto, and cash is gone for it. I mean, there's so much stuff, But let me ask you this: he had 100 pieces. Tim had more than 100 pieces of shrapnel in his body.
Yes.
Here's the miracle: all his organs were left intact.
Correct. All his organs, those 45 hollow points should have made his body mush. Hollow point bullets expand on entry, so it's not a nice, neat bullet. And when they exit, they make giant exit wounds. And one of the wonderful things was that none of the bullets left Tim's body. One slid between his spine and his lung. It nicked his lung. If it had taken out his spine, it could have killed him. If it took out of his lung, it could have really just damaged him. But it just nicked his lung. One bruised his colon, but it didn't destroy his colon. All those major organs in his torso, it just wound around and avoided all of them.
Tell you what, the guy should have died on the pavement outside the church. He should have died in the ambulance with, I think it was Officer Cantrell's fingers plugged into him. And he should have died in surgery, but he pushed on as one surgeon after another worked to repair the damage. He survived the operations and the repair work, kept living, now helping others through his church. Wonderful story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The bullet that blew through his arm and slammed into his head went through the layers of bone and then stopped right at the membrane around his brain.
Yeah, stone the crows. I mean,
so the
this guy was
doctors,
meant
when
to
they
live,
removed it.
Tell you what, I'm going to touch him for luck if I ever get to meet him, I can assure you. This story must give people hope.
Yes. It does, because it tells us it's not just that God saved Tim's life really in marvelous ways, but that the question that I had when I went to write it was, why this pastor? If we make the assumption that Satan was going to try to take out this pastor, I wanted to know why. So I started interviewing people. I started asking a lot of different people in the church. And it really goes back to when Tim was a 19-year-old kid who grew up in church, but he thought that the church was just like all the people in the world, right? They had the same marriage problems, the same sins. Tim was chasing girls and drinking, and he just didn't see the purpose of any of it. And he came to a point where he said, look, God, if you're real, if you're really real, please make a difference in my life. And he felt God make a change in his heart right then. And so Tim doesn't do anything halfway. He went into serving God full time, and it really was like God put his arm around Tim's shoulder and said, hey, look at this young lady over here. She needs your help, Look at this fellow over here. Well, let's take care of him. And so I feel like Tim's life is really partnering with God to reach out and love people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really why, if this is Satan doing this, that he wanted to take Tim out.
Yeah, Satan's he's a cunning animal, isn't he? At the end of the day,
he's pretty clever that way.
You hear a lot of people say, "Look, I heard voices to go do this, go do that," with all the shootings. I mean, Odom, his manifesto reads like an intelligent person suffering from severe schizophrenia. A man experiencing the world through a film of paranoia and inflated sense of his own intelligence. And apparently he describes strange things, and he explains that he encountered human-looking Martians constantly on airplanes and in grocery stores, right? That's in his manifesto.
That's his manifesto, right? He wrote a 43-page manifesto that he sent out to everybody after he shot Tim. And he was planning to shoot Tim's outreach pastor, John Padula, and John just happened to not be there that day. But Tim had been in a biochemistry program at the University of Idaho, and he got involved in transcendental meditation. And after he had an out-of-body experience, that's when he started having these entities, we'll call them, these beings started harassing him and tormenting him. And his manifesto describes just really like they tormented him, and they had no love. They were cruel, and they wanted to put things into his brain and physically caused him pain. I mean, it's actually really a sad story. But he believed that Tim and John were aliens from Mars, and he needed to kill them. And so it's kind of funny because it happened the day after a Ted Cruz presidential rally where Tim offered the opening prayer. So everybody thought it was political. It wasn't political at all.
No.
It was this weird, these creatures that were tormenting Kyle after that out-of-body experience.
So how did you balance telling the story of Tim shooting and the stories from the people who were saved through his church?
I just wanted to go find out what this church was all about. Who were these people? What was Tim really like? And in order to find out what somebody's really like, you have to talk to other people and hear from them too. Adela is their church secretary. And if you look at Adela, she's just the brightest, most friendly, happiest, brown-eyed, beautiful woman. I just love her dearly. She was a meth addict from childhood onward. She had been molested as a little girl, and she was on drugs her whole life. The day that she met Tim, she was 90 pounds and skinny, and her bones stuck out, and she had just gotten into a huge drag-out fight with her brother because she was coming down off of drugs and she didn't have any money. And she said, Tim, he just had so much compassion. He took her to Denny's, and they got her into their drug rehabilitation program. And today, Adela is just a beautiful person, so much fun. And she doesn't look like she was ever a meth addict. She looks so healthy.
Well, there's so many
and that's the story.
Sick people through the drug system. People say, well, you choose to do it. You chose to do it. Your own damn fault. Why have I got to pay for that? I mean, it's a lot more than that. And we need more of these places, to be honest with you. Do you think that anyone can get a second chance at life through faith, like the people who sought out the church's help?
Absolutely. It's interesting to me that throughout my life, I have seen God hold my shoulder and say, no, I love that person. The idea is that Jesus died for us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, is what the Bible tells us. And so I feel like that God has stopped me personally from judging people because he cares about them. They matter to him. And it's this amazing thing that I've seen at the altar church there where Tim is that he's taken these people who are just in the worst places, people you would not want around your children, and he has transformed them and made them brand new people.
Yeah, I guess they're not the people you'd invite home for Thanksgiving lunch or something.
Yeah, well, and now they are. Now they're people I would have for Thanksgiving, no problem.
They transformed. The book itself is GunShot Witness. It's easy to understand without losing the details, and I mean, I believe it leaves the reader with a message of hope and inspiration and even perseverance. And the author is Amy Joy Hess, who's my special guest on Nothing Like a Good Book. And let me think now. I wanted to tell where we could get this thing before I forget. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. It's only $2.99. Paperback, $12.95. So it's still a lovely, affordable gift for yourself or for somebody else. And the audio book,
Mark, Mark, it's important to people to know that every cent beyond our production costs, every cent is going into Tim's Good Samaritan Rehabilitation Program.
Lovely.
To help people who might not have money for the program. And Tim does a good job of keeping the cost down anyway, but I mean, he has to pay, upward of $30,000 a year just for insurance. So
what, on the church?
Yeah. So we've got the money is going to go toward helping people be able to go into the program if they don't have money.
I see. Okay. Right. All righty. Well, I've got a little film production company, and I'll buy the book myself so that we can have a good look at it with the team, because I think it'd make a nice little movie, to be honest with you.
I think that would be great.
Let me ask you, what was it like writing the chapter on the devil that shot him, Kyle Odom, who committed the horrible crime, but also struggling himself, in fairness? What was it like writing his chapter?
It was interesting to be able to try to look into the psychology of Kyle and watch this journey that he took from being a biochemistry student who graduated magna cum laude to being somebody constantly harassed and tormented by these beings that had no love, that were wanted to dominate him. They were hypersexual and they sexually molested him. I mean, this is a horrible, sad story. Very fascinating, though. Kyle, of course, at the very beginning says that he's 100% sane, 0% crazy. But then, he describes this descent into paranoid madness. It's just really revealing, but it makes you wonder, maybe I shouldn't have an out-of-body experience. Maybe something's going to jump into me, while I'm gone. So that's my take on it.
This is The Exorcist all over again, isn't it? I tell you. You're going to tell me what happened to Odom in jail all this time. How many years did he get?
He was given 25 years.
All right, paroled when?
But he had 10 years. Then he was up for parole. That doesn't mean he's going to get paroled, but he's up for parole in 2026.
Right. Well, a guy like him, though, what would he have to prove sitting in front of the parole board, for God's sake?
He'd have to prove that he was a safe person. I don't know if he can prove that just yet. Tim, of course, is praying for him. And when Tim goes down and visits him, Kyle has slowly come to the conclusion that Tim is not actually an alien. And one of the reasons is because Tim has compassion on him. And these beings that tormented Kyle had no compassion, were power hungry and crazy. And by the way, they hate Jesus, which is really interesting. Kyle said that they called Jesus a megalomaniacal jerk and a fraud, which I thought was kind of funny. I mean, Jesus healed people, he fed people, he took care of people. Who would call Jesus a megalomaniacal jerk except for the unclean spirits that he was constantly casting out of people?
There you go.
So that's one of my indications that it's not just schizophrenia, that there's a spiritual side of it too.
With guns in this country and all, people are sick to death of the killings and the shootings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy's got a gun. If he gets out, and he's still got a gun. I mean,
he's a felon. He's a felon, so hopefully he won't get a gun.
All right. Let me ask you this. A good writer, Lauren Lee, Lauren Lee, she's a critic as well. She says it's clear from page 1 that Amy Joy is passionate about the people she met while creating this book and sharing their stories. And she said, I was captivated by the hope and enthusiasm for this story that exudes from every page. And Amy Joy, you spoke extensively with Tim Remington and the members of his church while writing his story to accurately and extensively relay their experiences. I can't imagine that was easy to do.
It was actually a lot of fun for me, Mark, because these people, I feel actually that they wrote the book because they tell their stories very just honestly, down to earth. They're down to earth people. There's nothing, I like to say that they don't come across as religious people, right? They're not trying to get people to join their little faith group. That's not the point. These are people who are in very difficult, dark places, and they were rescued. And that's the story they're telling. They're telling, that I was dead and now I'm alive. John Padula, who Tim Remington was also going to shoot. John Padula, I have pictures of him that were his mug shots. And he used to sit in the back of the church with his hood over his head, because there was a girl he liked. So he came to church because he liked a girl. And he got prayed for one day, and it just, he said, I had never noticed that the sky was blue before, and I had never noticed the green of the trees. And this full-grown man, has tears in his eyes as he talks about this. So it was actually, for me, it was a lot of fun to talk to them because they're all victory stories.
Where did you get all of the clippings and photos from?
A lot of them came from the Coeur d'Alene Press, and I got permission to use the clips. I got clips from a variety of different places. You're apparently allowed to just use clips as long as you don't, reproduce the whole thing and you give credit. Mm-hmm. So I was able to get actual newspaper clippings.
Well, why not? It's a true
pictures
story.
From people.
It's not like you're trying to hide anything. It's a true story, and you need the facts to come out and all of that.
Yes.
And so on. So what a great gift. Now, let me understand clearly. At the moment, it's Amazon in the Kindle, the book form at $2.99, right? It's Amazon
Correct.
Kindle.
And the print book and the audiobook should be ready by the end of November, beginning of December. I'm saying December 6th. I think that's safe.
Okay.
But if people want to buy the ebook right now and read it, then they know whether they want to buy the print book in order to give it to people for Christmas.
Yeah, good idea. So what's the address that they can buy now?
They can go to GunShotWitness.com, GunShotWitness.com, all one word, and that will take them straight to the Amazon page. GunShotWitness.com. Okay, all one word, GunShotWitness.com. Oh, fabulous. Paperback, only $12.95, an audiobook $5.95. Right.
Lovely. Good price.
I want it to be
reasonable. And I love the idea that, over excess of the costs of production, because anything you do costs money. But after that, all the available extra funds are going to be going in towards helping hundreds of others through Tim's church.
Yes.
Isn't that great, eh? I think it's marvelous. That's terrific. Well, I wish you all the best, Amy Joy Hess. It's your first bookie, and it's going to be a number one.
Thank you. Thank you much.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you. You're a delight to interview, and I've enjoyed you very much, and I hope my listeners do too.
I appreciate it, Mark. I really do.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.